Now it's working.
Tight. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Theater Company's panel on fat and theater. My name is Vivian, and I would like us just to go around if we can give our pronouns, our names, and our current artistic endeavors. I'm going to start off. My name is Vivian Turman. I'm an actress and an artist. I'm a figure painter as well as model here in Salt Lake City, and I use she, her pronouns. Dave, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Dave Hansen. My pronouns are he, him. I am an actor, director, currently also kind of dabbling in getting back into writing since I'm stuck home so much these days. But we are in pre-production for a couple of shows that we hope will go up in the spring.
Perfect. All right. And then Ash?
Hi, I'm Ash. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm just trying to survive this pandemic. So normally I'm a costume designer and I'm a company member at AOTC. But right now I'm doing art commissions and yoga classes and anything I can do to make money.
All right. Thank you so much, Sammy.
Hi, my name is Sammy. I use she, her, and they, them. And right now, I'm mostly just doing online content, mostly drag performances, and starting to do some random online theater with my best friend with our company called Salty Clown Productions. So, yep, that's what we're doing.
All right. And then Sierra, please.
Hi guys, this is Draco. My name is Sierra Crawford. I use she, her pronouns. My specialty is movement, direction, and choreography, but same as Ash. Pandemic. So I also do costume design. So I started my own Etsy shop a couple of weeks ago to try and work on some projects, different crafts and cosplays that hopefully someday I'll be able to use again. And then also hope that I'll be able to get back into the movement direction when it's safe to do so.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I did kind of want to start with a conversation of why we are specifically calling this a fat panel instead of like a body positive or plus size panel. Kind of just a quick general overscope is fat is a descriptor just like tall, just like short, but it's specifically a descriptor that our society has put a moral value to. It's one of the few descriptors that we can use on physical appearance that specifically targets and has a negative connotation to it to an extreme amount that also sort of reflects on your like personality. And that's just, it's a reclamation of the word, and kind of our goal is to normalize it as sometimes we hear people go, well, I feel fat. And someone's like, no, you're hot. Well, I can be fat and hot at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. So I know that people's relationship with that word is difficult and tumultuous. So in no point do I want anyone to feel like they're forced to identify as such, whether as a viewer or someone on the panel. But for simplicity's sake and in the spirit of normalization, we're going to kind of use the blanket term fat, especially because it is inclusive of all types of bodies. When we talk about fat liberation, oh, Hank's gonna come say hi. Sorry, he'd be yelling if I put him in my room. Fat liberation is liberation for all body types. When the most marginalized among us becomes normalized and free, then we can all be free. I also want to identify that Black women have always led this movement. They have been at the head of body positivity, of fat acceptance and fat positivity. And as activists, as people engaging in the community, as allies, as fat identified folks, our duty is to follow and to listen to them because they have been showing up much longer than any of us. And I do want to make that clear. So awesome. Let's begin. But we're not going to eat our plants. Anyway, sorry about that. So kind of to start off, I kind of wanted to talk, and we did talk about trigger warnings. This is going to talk about body image, about fat phobia and microaggressions. So I do want to put that trigger warning out in general. If we're going to go into topics of food or specific really triggering topics, please make sure that you do a trigger warning ahead of time. So kind of, I wanted to start off with like, we have costume designers, we have directors, we have writers, we have dancers, we have actors here, of kind of the different ways that we've all experienced fat phobia as artists, whether that's directed to ourselves or directed to our peers. And how is that situation handled, if at all, and what do you wish had happened?
I guess I can speak to, at least from a costume designer's standpoint, like working with cast members who we all have some level of vulnerability when we put ourselves on the stage, but getting so many comments of, don't measure me now, I'm gonna lose weight later, like in time for the show to start. No, that's not gonna happen, not in a healthy way. You're not. And just like only in my experience as well, from thin company members or cast members who are speaking negatively about their own bodies, and that I think is really harmful to everyone in general. But especially to me, if I'm like part of the cast as well, I'm like, okay, so you think that like your body is unacceptable to be on the stage right as it is, like what are you saying about my body? Like they're not thinking that, but that definitely is how it comes across. So yeah, I think any sort of judgments about size that are related to morality and goodness, like you were saying, is like, that's gonna be a fatphobic microaggression for sure.
I definitely have experience with some, as an actor, with some terrible costume designers. I've also had experience of being in the casting room as a stage manager and hearing some of the comparisons for the casting that just devastated me. And like sitting there not having really an opinion, because as a stage manager, you're really there to support and keep everything organized. You might have an opinion every once in a while of maybe their behavior. If an actor is a really terrible actor at backstage, then you might pitch in, but you're not going to be a part of the casting. And so I've sat in rooms where people are like, oh, what about her? And they're like, she's too thick for this role. And it's just like, she's a size 12. Like she's not even close to being, in your opinion, thick. In my opinion, she looks great and she would fit any role. And the fact that the size is being considered as a casting decision is also like something I've always struggled with, being sitting there and having no real authority or opinion on that. And also of having terrible costume designers that make it sound like they've had to stop everything they've done to compensate my size, or scour and find things that they've never been able to find before to make sure I have a costume, or even like be like, do you have like clothes that you can bring, because I can't find anything. And it's like, if I can find things for me to wear, I'm pretty positive you can find things for me to wear. But yeah, let me bring my own clothes to be my costume, since you don't have time or the energy. And so that frustration of like, now I have to do someone else's job to make them feel better about their job because they don't want to do that extra work, or they don't want to build a costume for me because then who else is going to use it in their storage and stuff like that. And just like those tiny little things that they don't even think they're saying anything inappropriate, but then they're not looking in the room, or they're not even opening up their eyes of like who they're saying it to.
It's
Yeah.
always funny when people make a comment about somebody else not realizing that there are other people dealing with the same thing in the room. And I don't even think I'd consider this a microaggression. This is more of a macroaggression. But I was working on a show and actually had a producer, as we were trying to cast a show, make the comment when we brought up a particular actor who was of larger size. He said, well, people come and see the theater and root for the good guy because they want to see part of themselves in the good guy. And nobody wants to imagine themselves fat and out of shape. And it's kind of what we live with just that idea that theater has been stuck with a traditional body type for certain roles. We're automatically excluded from other roles. And I've had directors over the years say, hey, I want to do the show and I want you to play this role. And then a few years later, when I packed on a few pounds, that show actually came up and that director said, oh, no, there's never really anything in this show for you. I'm like, yeah, that's not what you told me, 2-3 years ago. But it also, I think it's hard because a lot of these microaggressions can get tied with a social stigma that not as many people see the injustice of, but also they try to justify other things. When I get told, we don't have a whole lot of costumes that fit you, and I make the comment, well, I'm not as big as some other people you've cast before. Yes, I'm larger than most, but you've got to have something. Oh, sorry, I meant because you were tall. Nice cover.
Yeah, I would say, in my experience, my background is in dance. I started dancing at a young age. My mom is a dance teacher, and so my performance background started there. And then as I got to college, I kind of shifted more towards theater, and I had done a little bit of theater, and it's interesting that even within the limitations for marginalized folks within theater, it still was a little bit more welcoming than dance. And I still love dance, and it's still so close to my heart, and why I am still involved in doing movement direction. But being a part of an art that was purely for voyeurism, for watching, for performing, and very obviously my body sticking out from the rest of the dancers. I always knew I didn't fit. I always knew that when they were picking the costumes for the dance team, that they had to think, well, we really love this, but will this look good on Sierra? And I felt that. And it was, on the one hand, I knew I was talented and that I was, working hard and deserved to be on the team, but there was that sense of guilt of, well, if I wasn't on the team, maybe they would have their perfect look or the uniformity. And so something that I would have wished had happened, or something that had been done differently, is just creating those opportunities to change the culture, to change the support of, you are a fat girl and you're an incredible dancer, rather than like the butt kind of a thing. Acknowledging my talent rather than my limitations for the talent, and having that support behind it, because then maybe I would have stayed in a little bit more, or pursued professional dance performance. instead of kind of like, well, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I would have been confident enough to have done that, to know that the space would have been welcoming for my type of body.
That's so true. Also, I feel like a lot of times, I don't know if this is your experience as well, Sierra, but I feel like a lot of times directors or costume designers will like force an insecurity on you without asking you, hey, are you insecure about your body? I had one director when I was very young, probably like 14, say, these are the people that I think are not going to feel comfortable in these dance costumes, and lists off everyone over a certain size. And I was like, I didn't even cross my mind that I would have any sort of insecurity about my body at that point. But yeah, that's something that we really need to watch out for, is speaking to other people's experiences without asking them first.
Yeah. I think that I think that is something that directors do, or even choreographers do, quite often. Like, it was something that I was really surprised. I have been incredibly privileged not to experience as much of this in my professional life, but in my education, it was plagued with projected insecurities of, I just did what I did. I showed up, did what I was supposed to do, and then would hear these comments afterwards of like, why am I always getting cast as the mother? Or why are my other peers who are wide hipped always playing these adult roles instead of roles that are their age? And hearing that it's because they have a heaviness to them, or because they have a maturity to them. So they have this projected age just based on their size, even though they are that age and they are that size. Hearing like a choreographer ask a super thin castmate if her thighs were going to be that size when the show happened, and me, a size 16, sitting there being like,
Yeah.
is that why I'm not getting choreographed into dances? Like, or like even really well intentioned. And I think that's something that sometimes people don't think, is they think, I meant this in the best way and I had really good intentions. So if it hurt your feelings, that's not, the responsibility is not as much on me. And it's like, I had a professor one time say, I hope you take this as a compliment in front of a class full of peers. So I had no time to prepare anything like that, and was like, for a bigger woman, you really know how to place your body on stage. And I just kind of was like, well, let's break that down. Is that because we don't give bigger people the opportunity to be comfortable on stage? Is it because you make us think that we shouldn't be comfortable on stage? And it was just, I was just so stunned that I couldn't say anything at the moment, because there was a class of 15 people staring at me, and I was just like, thank you. Like,
Yeah, it's
and
not
it just,
fine if they tell you how you should feel about their comment before they make the comment.
Well, and
Yeah.
how you should feel, like it's like they're giving you permission to accept yourself in the space. And when you already like accept yourself and you take control of your space, then they're like, wow, look at you. Like, I've had so many choreographers that are like, for a big girl, you're great at dancing. And I'm like, for a big girl, I'm doing the same damn moves. Like, it's not hard. And these are not hard moves. And like, just because, I have to wear probably a leotard to keep these where they're supposed to be, doesn't mean that I can't do the same moves that everyone else is doing and I've had choreographers that have literally not choreographed me in a number that I'm actually singing in, because they were like, oh, well, I didn't know if we were going to do something different for you, since this is a very dancey number. And I was like, I've been in musical theater since I was 14. Like, I have been doing musical theater. I haven't stopped till, pandemic, but like, I hadn't stopped doing shows since I was 14 years old. And those were full blown musical theater shows where I was dancing for 2+ hours while singing, while acting. And I never had an issue. There was never a moment where I was like, I don't know if I could do this. And if I had an issue with a movement, I would tell them. It was usually something like, my knees are terrible because of basketball when I was little. So no, I will not be kneeling for 2 minutes. But it it was even hard to say that sometimes, because then if you show that weakness, now they're like, oh, you can't do any of it. Like,
Yeah.
the moment you say, oh, this is a little hard for me, or oh, it just takes me that much longer for me to get up from this and this, they're like, oh, we're going to change everything for you so that it's super easy and you don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
And
And
it's just so,
there's a lot of choreographers and directors that I feel like assume that
yeah.
we know what you can do before you've even stepped foot on the stage. And I've seen it in auditions, and I've seen it in rehearsals, and there are so many people that are, it's just maddening how wrong they are in these very quick assumptions, and yet they'll take people who they perceive as dancers and run them over and over and over and over to see what they can do. Like, I may not be as trained, but give me the chance. I can do moves as well.
Yeah.
Just give me the same chance to get the time to learn them and the reps to show you what I can do.
Yeah. And it's like you have to work twice as hard to show half of what everyone else is doing, because I've done shows where like I have worked myself to the bone over dance moves, over getting something, because I knew that the moment I messed up, their eyes were on me. While like scrawny, tall, lanky boy next to me who cannot tell what his left foot and his right foot are is getting away with murder over there because he doesn't know how to dance, but he's tall and he can sing. So they're like, okay, you stand here and you do your best. And then I'm over here like sweating because I am putting every 200% energy in the littlest amount of dance moves they've given me.
I think that's something that often goes overlooked, is just how on point fat people have to be in every aspect of their craft.
Yep.
Being the best dancer, doing 200%, putting in those moves. And I think that it sets up this really unsafe environment of, it almost becomes that you can no longer say, hey, this is a boundary for me, is because those boundaries get eliminated because we've been trained to be so grateful for every crumb of opportunity that we've gotten, that it becomes, I don't want to be difficult to work with, or yes, you asked me to do it and I say yes every time, or that kind of thing. And I think that crosses across all aspects of theater, whether costume design, directing, writing, acting, is that you have to be 200 times what someone next to you has to be who's a different body type, because there's going to be a lot more generosity given to them than to you.
Yeah.
And
I
And
see
I
that
think-
a lot too with being fat and black. Not gonna lie, the amount of times I've worked myself to death because like another person can walk in and just take my job no matter what. Even if I've worked with this company over and over again, the moment they find someone that seems more accessible for them, then or less probability, like, then they're going to just jump to that. And so it's always like a sense of trying to make sure you have a secure space without being a problem. Like, you can't address some of these things because that might mean that you don't get a job next time. Like, you don't
Mhm.
get called to do this gig next time. And basically apologizing for your existence until they need you as a token for your existence.
Until you fit that specific, whether if you're a guy, you have to either be dumb or funny or evil.
Yeah.
Or if you're a woman, you have to be a mother.
Yeah. Or an ingenue.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, right. And it's once you fit somebody else's perception, then you have to work twice as hard to get back into it. Whether it's acting, dancing, whatever.
Yeah.
there's always that extra edge of you have to push harder to show somebody that there is more than you could do. And I think,
Yeah.
this is kind of pervasive across all theater. We kind of create a culture of you're just supposed to do the work and suck it up. And you're right, anybody can replace you at any time. So we have to let people abuse us
Mm-hmm.
in order to get the work done. And I think that speaks to pretty much everybody, but I think there are certain groups based on racial divides, based on gender divides, and body image that kind of exacerbate that for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to mention that it's exhausting
Oh,
to continually prove that you are proficient in your craft.
absolutely.
Because when I tell people I'm a choreographer, I'm a movement director, they're like, are you really? Do you just say that? And it's like, do you want me to show you my degrees and my national
Yeah.
awards and my projects? And it's like, I have to. And because if I had a different body and I said that, you would believe me and you would believe me instantly. But instead, I have to prove this over and over and over again because of the culture and the stereotype of that's not what the so and so artist can look like.
Yeah.
And if that was changed,
Yeah, because we've become, we have to teach ourselves to be irreplaceable. Like we have to be so amazing at our craft that they can't think of anyone else but us. But that is so exhausting to spend every waking moment being your advocate. Like being your self advocate is so exhausting to continue to, like, it literally is like you're in an interview every day. Like no matter what, every interaction you are in is you trying to prove your worth. And it's exhausting and it's not fair because I mean, we all work for those degrees so that we can be like, nope, but I have this degree and I have this degree and I have this degree and I did this study and I worked under this person, and you have all of these names and labels and stuff that you put on yourself because then another person that might be a different image than you can be like, oh, well, I saw High School Musical once and I was like, let's be an actor. And you're like, congratulations, you beat me.
I think, and like, that's assuming that you get your foot in the door.
Yes.
That's assuming that you can even get into the room. Because I think that's something that I saw happen far too much in a degree where everyone there is getting an acting degree, but I didn't see all of those people in any of the shows during the season. And I think a lot of people get left behind. They're paying to be there. They're doing the work that they should be doing. They are doing 100%. They're showing up to more classes than other peers, but they've gone years in a program without being cast. And at that point, it's no longer the failure of, it was never the failure of that individual, but there's something wrong with the program if your students aren't represented on the stage, aren't represented in your main stage shows. If you're constantly making your fat students play older characters because they do the work, because they show up 200%, and they're the only people that you have that can play that role, because you didn't pick it out for that person, you picked it out for someone else, and now you have to rely on this person to fill in your gaps. And I think that's also something that gets ignored so much, is all of this is assuming that people will even let you in the room.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that gatekeeping is perpetuated and kept in education.
100%.
Yeah, that we train.
And I think it starts with the season choice. That's the problem, is you have a program of actors that you already know are going to be there. Why are you picking shows that don't fit your students? why are you picking shows that they can't be a part of? And now you're scrambling to cast someone. Or why are you picking shows and not just casting people because they're capable of doing the show? Like, that's the thing, is like, it starts on the fact that they're like, oh no, but we're going to do this, this, and this show. And then they look at their students and they're like, oh, well, we don't have any of these people. So we'll grab from the community. And now we have this entire show. There's not one student in it. We'll make them work backstage, even though none of them are technicians. And it's just like, there's a point where you need to start at the beginning, and you have a program, use that program to its fullest. You have bodies, you have people ready to learn and do things. You need to do it.
And the pure nature of an
Yeah.
educational program should be to educate people, in this case, actors, to push beyond their boundaries,
Yeah.
not pigeonhole them into a certain type of role.
Yeah.
And also like reimagining what these roles look like, because if we constantly just feed the fire of ingenues look like this, then everybody in a marginalized body says, well, I'm not worthy of love. I won't have that fairy tale ending. I'm getting emotional talking about it because those are the stories that we watch and that we see tell us about what our lives are going to be like.
Yeah.
And not seeing people that look like me in those roles has had an impact on my self-esteem and my future. And so educators, casting directors, everybody being brave enough to reimagine those roles and reimagine this lead, this ingenue is a fat, disabled woman of color. Like, let's just change it. Let's change it so that we can see ourselves, that everybody can see themselves in these roles, and trying new things. And like Dave said, like pushing themselves. I would have loved to have been pushed to play this challenging role rather than, well, you're going to be the evil stepmother again.
Yeah, I would have loved to play
Yeah.
anything that wasn't a drunk,
Mhm.
who wasn't the promiscuous girl, or who wasn't the drunk promiscuous girl. Like, the amount of times, like, and the old drunk. Like, I have played old more in my age, like in college, in high school. I played the adult roles. I was 14 and I'm like, sure, I'm your mama. What? I don't know this. Like, this is not pushing me because I'm playing this role forever. And so, like, going to college and then being put in the same roles was just like devastating. And the only like cool role I got was because they ran out of men, and so they put me in a male role. And the amount of times I've had like roles that were just originally male roles that they're like, yeah, you can do it. And I'm like, I mean, it's better writing than some of the female roles I've played. But
True.
like, at the same time, like, why can't we just cast away? Why do I have to be the drunk every single time? I mean, I'm good at playing drunk. I get it. Like, put on my resume, but like, I have more, and like spending all my class time working on these like amazing monologues and these scenes, and like diving into different characters and different things, and then going and auditioning for the like main show in the university, and they're like, cool, you're a Kit Kat girl, go. And you're like, awesome, great, that's all. I just did a Christopher Durang 7 roles, but I'll play a Kit Kat girl because that meant nothing in the end.
Yeah, those are two things that I would like to hit on and kind of explore a little bit more. Is one, this idea of educational theater, like that we really harp on realism, and that right now is the age of realism, and that we're portraying the stories that we see in real. Then let me see some real people on stage. I have always kind of no whenever someone says that, because I don't see me on stage. I don't see my friends on stage. I see the same straight-sized white people on stage, able-bodied, every single show. And I want to see that for theater. I want us to really embrace that going forward, that we're telling real people's stories. That means, of course, fat people love. Of course, they are the romantic interests in their lives. Of course, they're scary, and of course, they're angry, but they have the whole gamut of human emotions, just like anybody else. And so it's always ironic to me in educational settings to hear that. Or, well, this is educational theater. We gave this person the role to push them, but you're giving your plus-sized actors the same mother, promiscuous, or made comedy relief roles every single time. What's pushing that? What are they gaining from that program? And kind of that idea of, if they're always playing the promiscuous people, like, what does that say? We tell people they're too heavy, or they're too full figured to play someone in their early 20s or a 19-year-old, when this is what I looked like when I was 19. This is what I looked like when I was 15. That this weird hypersexualization of bodies becomes this weird also saying that you can't have these lived experiences because of that. That I think that, like, all of that really spoke to. And to what you were saying, Sammy, of never being able to branch out from that. We are given these meaty things in class, and then we're never, like, we're trained. We obviously know how to do it, but we never get to show that. I scream into the void.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird, because educational theater, I've always felt like it's been a little bit two-sided, because you have the classes in which, yeah, you're going to give everybody an opportunity to do stuff. But the productions themselves are, and I understand why, but they're treated just like any other performance. So the mindset of trying to educate an actor kind of falls out of the window a little bit, just because now we have to put on the production that everybody in the community wants. And I think, the people have heard me harp on this a lot, but the mid-century musical era, I think, set us off on the wrong path. Because while, they focused on everything idyllic, people had to be young and beautiful and in love, and everything had to had a happy ending. And as we've moved into this age of realism, our idea of the characters haven't changed. And it's that stereotype that's been handed down for decades now,
Yeah.
that we don't seem to be able to break out of it. You're absolutely right. Fat people love, fat people have their hearts broken, and it's not funny when they have their hearts broken. Most times, if you see a show where, a fat guy is dealing with an issue, they treat it with comedy.
Yeah.
And it's very unfair. And I will be the absolute first to say that women in theater have it 10 times harder than any of us guys do. I'm just going to throw that out there right now.
Yeah, I think it's a constant. Well, and it's hard because in educational theater, you're going there to learn. So what you want to do is absorb everything. You want to be taught how to be an actor in the real world. And yet most of the time I feel like in my education, it ended up with, you are too big for a chorus role at this moment, but you also have a baby face, so you won't be Big Mama for a very, very long time. So now we're going to hone in your comedy skills, because you're probably just going to be a ham and a comedic relief for 2 decades until you actually look like an older lady to be, Lilith White in Fela. Like, that was their idea of educating me on being an actor. And then when eventually I was like, but I want to do this and I want to do this, they're like, you know what? You'd be a good stage manager. And like convinced me to do that as a career because it would be more viable when I moved to New York to be a stage manager than to try to do any auditions. And I moved to New York and I was a stage manager and I was absolutely terrified to do any auditions because in my head, I knew instantly I would never get cast. And so I didn't do one. I didn't do one single one. And that was because of how I was taught in my university to be an actor.
And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about educational theater, because that sets the basis, I think. And that really, a lot of bad habits for, I think, thinner directors are established there because they see what their teachers and mentors are doing, as well as I went into college with very little self-consciousness about my body and the theater. And I came out angry and ready to fight it, but could have very easily been suppressed of, I need to find a different career. And that is horrifying to me that happens every day to people that are incredibly talented. But we've set up this foundation in educational theater that it's just not going to happen. So you either need to be in tech or find a different thing to do, or get ready to be the funny guy,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's insane that was my professor's idea of making me a successful theater person, was to kind of just like move my talents elsewhere. And I mean, I still have done shows and stuff. I didn't do anything in New York, but when I moved here, I definitely did shows, but it was still the first show I auditioned. I was so nervous because I wasn't my ideal weight in my head. And I was like, I haven't done shows in a while. And once you get into that comfortable spot where you know everyone and I always made best friends with the costumers so they would actually costume me correctly, like, and everything. And so like the anxiety of trying to start that all over, I completely bombed my first audition. And I even got a callback. Not gonna lie, probably only got a callback because I was the only Black person in the audition, but I digress. But I literally didn't go to the callback because I was so embarrassed by how my performance was, because it wasn't 120% of an audition performance. An audition, like you should not have to be your show ready self. But because I wasn't perfect in my head, I was like, it's not worth it. They didn't see anything that I could give them. And so I don't know why they gave me a callback, but I'm not going to show up because I'm now fully embarrassed on what I did in that audition.
I think something that would help educational theater, honestly, any kind of theater, is branching out the repertoire. Like Dave said, like doing these same shows that the audience wants to see and they want to see it a specific way. There's so much more to theater. There's so much more to performance, to creativity. The best experience I had in my education was my mentor and a theater professor who gave me an opportunity to movement direct a devised piece, and casting it with a very diverse cast, in multiple different ways, not just body type, but giving us all an opportunity to play something and play characters that have never been played before, to tell a story that's never been told, to really like stretch ourselves. And I feel like that's something that we can incorporate while also doing the traditional shows in non-traditional ways and growing that way, but like embracing that there's so much more to tell that we can be doing, rather than beating this one show over and over and over again.
I think
Let's
the
try
most
something else.
Yeah, I think the most we need to do, most what education theater should do, is do more original work. You have all of these talented, very expressive, creative people, and the fact that you're still trying to do Guys and Dolls for the upteenth time, like you have all of these like minds that are literally exploding with creativity and have so many things to say, so many things to do, so many things to create. Like, I don't know why universities do not do more original work. You could literally make more money out of a good original work because you're not paying anything than Guys and Dolls. I promise no one needs to see anyone in zoot suits ever again. They still look good, but still.
Well,
And
and I think
like I see the need for, and I see students like creating their own groups so that they can do original work. And it's just like, and all of the directing classes, like my favorite roles were when I auditioned for the directing class, because they would fit you in what they wanted, but they would like be so creative and so out there, and like would decide to do, I mean, one person did literally The Nature and Purpose of the Universe, Christopher Durang. That is the weirdest script ever, and I loved it because it's so wild. I played 7 roles in like maybe an hour, and like we had a wild ride learning it. But it was something that no one else would know. No one else has done before, but we took it and we ran with it. And that original, like just having that new creativity was so inspiring compared to doing the same old musicals and the same old plays that you've seen millions of times.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think.
oh,
Oh, sorry.
no, you're fine. I think there's a lot of theaters that, and educational theater is no different, that kind of get stuck on the idea of these are the shows that we choose because these are the shows that people want to see. But at the same time, and it goes along with the roles as well and how they cast roles. But at the same time, if a theater isn't offering something different, how do people know that they don't want to see it?
Right?
And I
Mhm.
think the same thing goes with educational theater. I think a lot of the shows are done for the public. Um, I personally, I would love to go see something that I've seen 100 times, but see it cast with a completely out of stereotype list of actors
Yeah.
and breaking all kinds of norms just to see what these kids can do and the things that we could be teaching these kids.
Yeah.
Um, and I shouldn't say just kids because a lot of people go back to school too, but
Hmm.
yeah, there's so much we could be expanding their education. And I've heard a lot of people lately talk about, well, all things being equal, people should be going into an audition and the most talented person should win and get the role. And that's all there is. And we shouldn't consider, age or race or blah, 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 blah. And that's great. But we have to stop and look at the fact that a lot of these people aren't coming in with equal footing. You can't say that so-and-so who's done 80 billion shows because they've fit that ingenue role,
Yeah.
and somebody who's hasn't been able to get cast because they're of a different body type are going to have the same audition because their experience level is completely different, and that starts with education.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was gonna say. Even in another theater, like we all have our implicit biases. There's like no way of getting around those besides like actively looking beyond what we think of um, automatically for each role. Like we did, sorry, we did Fat Pig. That's what it's called.
Oh, I love Fat Pig.
It was
Great show.
beautiful in our first season, I think, at AOCC. And since then, I haven't really seen a whole lot of fat people in leading roles, in romantic roles. And I feel like every time I'm just like, go back to Fat Pig. Like, that was the whole point of why we
That's
did
the
this
whole
show.
point of the play. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like if we're not learning from that and like keeping that in mind as we make all of the new theater with people of color, with gay people, with trans people, like we still have to keep in mind like there are other diversities as well. Like
Yeah.
like
And why is it that if we want to see fat leads, we have to see a fat lead show.
Yes.
A
Yeah,
show written
exactly.
for
A
it's
show
it's a
written
show. It's
for
a fat story
yeah,
or a
exactly.
black story or
Yeah,
a gay
exactly.
story.
Yeah,
Why can't we just see people in roles?
exactly.
The amount of times that I've been asked if like my dream role is Tracy Turnblad. Fuck no. It's not.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times in the last couple of years I've been asked if or been told, you would make the perfect Lenny in Of Mice and Men. Great, thanks.
Thanks. Great.
Yeah,
I
no,
same.
I feel that hard. I feel that hard on so many levels because being a queer fat black person, Lord knows the amount of times I'm like, no, I don't want to play that role. And they're like, why not? I'm like, no, I'm not playing to Tituba. I'm sorry. No, I got it. I never did it. I actually never did because I was like, I'm good. And so like I
Mine too.
never want to play those, and I've had to play maid roles and I hate it so much. And I'm like, can't you just, I don't know, cast me in something that is not black? There's a lot of shows that have roles that you could just put me in. I'm great. I'm not gonna lie. Very talented, very funny, can make you
There's
cry.
there's a
Like
lot of roles out there that don't say that somebody is white or black or Asian,
exactly.
and yet it
Exactly.
always kind of defaults to white.
It always defaults to white. But then the moment they have a show that they need black people, guess who they call?
Right.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep.
They don't call me to be in the show, though. They call me to see how many black friends they can have audition for the show, which is also a fun, insulting recommendation I have all the time. But I'm like, cool. I'm not talented enough for you to be in the show, but let me be your producer for your black people and get them over to your theater today. And it's like that's the biggest thing too, is like I've literally had directors that call me and they're like, hey, I have this show that I'm doing, I'm really excited about it, I'm a little nervous because it's this. Do you have any friends that would want to audition? And I'm like, us black people don't just hang out and wait for you to call and be like, yes, let's go, and like get in a car to do your show. Like we see the same audition submissions, we see the same shows. If we want to audition for your show, we'll audition for your show. Or they'll be like, I don't want to do a show where there is a lot of diversity because they never show up. I wonder why, because I've seen your season over and over and again, and I know that you're probably not going to cast me anyways because you're going to find someone that is a friend of a friend of a friend who's not even in theater but sings well because they look the part. And so why would I come and audition for you? Because I don't fit your black stereotype too, because I don't have dark enough skin. I'm not skinny enough to be the black lead. And it's like, I'm not gonna put the work. You do your own work. You canvas for actors. If you do not know the diversity that you need to cast, you might not want to do the show and ask someone who is part of that diversity, part of that group, to do it, because they may know more people and they might actually like them and audition for the show. Because I'm not going to audition for someone that I know does not care about me until they have their token POC show and need me for it.
Yeah.
100%. I think that is something, those are the excuses I hear a lot of, is there's not that many stories about fat people. Every story is a story about fat person, just cast fat person. Well, we do it and then no one shows up, or the same like 3 people show. Well, you have to build a table that is inviting.
Yeah.
Like you have to make it enticing, or if they only see that this is what you do, they're not going to feel like that's a space that they're going to feel safe and comfortable working in, or even like that they're genuinely invited to be in.
Yeah, just because we colorblind cast at the bottom of your audition does not mean anything. It does not
Doesn't.
mean dick in my head. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
Did you copy and paste that from the last audition submission that was just posted?
Or somebody else's audition.
Exactly. Did you just
100%.
scroll down and hopefully find it and copy and paste it so that you looked inclusive? Because that's all it does. It just shows that you're inclusive. And
Yeah.
if I'm not comfortable with anyone that is behind that table, I'm not gonna audition. Like flat out. I've auditioned for my friends, and I'm very picky on my shows these days because I've been burned. I've been like literally insulted on the fact that they're like, you're talented and everything, but you just don't fit what we were going for. Do you want to be prop master? And it's like, cool. You just want it. If you wanted me on your crew, you could ask me to be on your crew. You don't have to, force me to go and audition for you so that you look inclusive. It's ridiculous.
It always bothers me that there's so many people who assume that handing out a show or a number of roles that include a lot of diversity, comes with them laying it out on a silver platter.
Yeah.
Like, you should be grateful that I'm
Mhm.
doing this show that includes people that, it's just as much an insult as to just not cast them in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't help anybody.
No, because I can see in the rest of your season that you don't care about me. Because I'll audition for you. I've done it to theaters as a test. I've auditioned for their just regular season show that, doesn't have any specific POC characters, and I don't get cast. And then I audition for their POC show, and then automatically I'm cast, and they're so excited to see me. And it's just like, that reflects you think, oh, they're auditioning, we're watching them. We're still watching you to see how you behave. It is a two-way street of how you treat people and how they treat you. Because I'm telling you, I've blacklisted theaters, I've blacklisted actors, I've blacklisted directors, choreographers in my head because I'm like, I don't feel that I need to deal with you. Like, it's not worth my time. It's not worth my talents. It's not worth my energy to deal with someone that is not going to respect me. And if you want to work with those people, that's fantastic. You have a gay old time. I'm not invited. Like, I'm not going. And if they have a problem with me not wanting work, that's fine. I'll move on to a different theater. I'll move on to a different place because my space is my space and I respect your space. If you don't respect mine, there's no reason for us to work together. And the problem is theater. There's so many times where it's like, oh, well, you just have to work. You have to buckle down and just work with them. No, there is a difference between being professional and being plain rude. And I don't have the time. I'm too old these days. Old. No, I'm not 19 anymore. I don't need the show. Like, that's my biggest thing is I don't need this to be added to my resume to make it look good. I'm doing this show because I love theater and I love creating with people. And if you're not going to make that into a loving and caring space, there's no reason for me to be here. There's no reason for you to be here because that's not the idea I have of theater. Theater is collaborative. And if you're going to combat that by being a diva, by being disrespectful, by like trying to be aggressive about owning your own space, you're not doing it right.
100%.
So, quick shout out for costume designers while we're on the topic of like making people feel comfortable. We're here to make the costume fit the body, not the body fit the costume. I don't know where people got that idea from. And also, everybody needs to feel sexy in their costume. I don't care what role they're in. If you don't feel like you are a sexy and powerful and comfortable human being, you're not going to do that role well.
Exactly.
And sexy does not equal thin. So
Exactly. Thank you. I know some of the best costumers I've had. I've literally purchased some of the costumes because they were so good. But like they came into because being in a costume fitting is vulnerable for everyone. Like you're in everyone's personal space. Like you may not know the costumer as well. Like there's so many elements to making it uncomfortable. And I've had so many wonderful costumers that are like, yes, we'll do this and this and this. Or I've had like breakdowns because I see me in this costume and I'm like, this is not, it's not good, not because they didn't do a good job, but that just like the body image is not what I wanted. And I've had so many wonderful people that have been like, I understand completely. We're going to tweak this, this, and this. How does that feel? And like making sure that I am comfortable without being insulting about it, being like, oh, all these fat people and they're like self-conscious. My goodness, just love your body. I get it. Like there are days where I love my body and there are days that I do not. And that is when I wear my biggest moo and I move on. But like, if you're not going to have that same energy, it's going to make it hard for that person to feel comfortable to let you know.
Yeah.
Because I'm very comfortable in my body, but there are moments where you're just like, ooh, I don't,
Yeah.
this is hard for me to feel.
If you can't costume like multiple types of bodies, like you're not that talented. Like
No.
that's part of the job, is that you have to be able to costume everyone who comes onto your stage.
Everyone. And make
And
them
he-
look good, not make them look like fools. I've had so many costumes where it's like everyone looks so clean and pristine, and then mine is like a patchwork of
Yep.
hot mess that I'm just like, cool.
Awesome.
And I think that speaks to, we were talking a little bit earlier about like people being afraid to like cast people because they don't have the back stock of costume. When you start making costumes that fit people, you'll have more costumes to fit people later down the road. Like
Yeah.
it's all like it's literally just a domino effect of as soon as you're able to get them in the door and they're on the stage doing these things, well, guess what? The next person that's going to fit in that costume, there's another, like, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Exactly.
But it's taking that step outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
I do want to say real quick that we're coming up on about an hour. So
Absolutely.
Ooh.
So that, yes, I don't want to cut off this conversation. It's so good. Gosh,
We're gonna do this in 3 parts.
You guys are incredible. I guess kind of like before kind of the end wrap up, I would kind of like to discuss positives, things that you guys have seen work incredibly well, or moments where it was just like, God, I can just leave. Fat phobia got left at the door today. Or kind of like what, and also to tie into that, what you'd like to see going forward.
I think I've had a lot of positives I've had some amazing choreographers and amazing directors that make it so that I don't feel like I am the other of the cast. And I mean, that's a big thing for me because I have a lot of others to be. And it's nice when you get, especially it's nice when you get a choreographer that sees like you dancing and is like, oh, finally, okay, let's go. Like, this is great. Like I've had some call outs that have been wonderful that I'm not gonna lie, I was like, ooh, yes, that made my entire year. And like having someone see how hard you work and also calling out the people that aren't working that hard. Because I've had moments where I've had directors that have stopped everything in rehearsal and is like, who sings that part? Who dances that part? And then it's like, oh, that's everyone. Well, Sammy was the only one who was doing it right. So I don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, ooh, 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 ooh. After like sweating an entire bucket, but like having that like validation, but also having the kind of the representation in every aspect, behind the table, in the production crew, like having it so that you're not just the one fat person in that entire company is the same as being the one queer person, being the one Black person. Like having that representation all across the board helps as well, because then it's not just a one-time thing. Like people are actually working hard to show how inclusive and how positive they are in any aspect. And I really would like to see that more when theater comes back. I mean, theater has been called out on a lot of stuff during this, and hate to say it, but if some of these theaters do not hold their accountability on some of the call outs, I don't think they're going to be worth my time, because I've learned a lot about myself in this pandemic, and I've learned a lot about how much I sacrificed in theater. And so if things don't change, if you're not actively trying to make it so that people feel comfortable coming to your auditions, you might not last. Hate to say it, but we're all ready, and we are also very observant of who is doing the work and who's not.
You're not ready for us.
No. I've been sitting in my house too long. Like, I have too many opinions.
I just wanted to add to that as well. Just what I said earlier is just one way that other theater performers, workers can do to help fat people is believe them. Believe them when they say, hey, I'm a movement director, hey, I'm a director, hey, I'm a costume designer. Like, believe that they are proficient at their job. Like, refer them to other positions. If there's something opening up, say, hey, I know this creator, they would be great for this role. Like, help us out, like help us get the jobs, help us get the roles, advocate for us, believe us, and hire us, because that representation, that inclusion is what's going to help open the door for others to come along as well. And then, also recognizing that your own biases, and fat people aren't excluded from that. We have our own biases as well, and we all just kind of work on that together, and it'll be great.
Yes.
Well, and I think, even further, just the assumption that a lot of people make that people are fat because they choose to be fat. And therefore, they don't see it as necessarily an act of exclusion. Not all fat people are just lazy people who don't want to go through the work. And that kind of still seems to be a lot of the norm. There is a lot of good stuff that I've seen, and there are a lot of people who are really trying to make some efforts beyond even just the body image issues. That I think there's some great works happening, but the one thing that I wish I would see more than anything else would be, fat people love thin people, and thin people love fat people, and
100%.
we don't have to have a fat show to tell the love stories of fat people. Or any show Jekyll and Hyde, sure, fine, he could be fat, I don't care. It's still the same story.
Because he's a
any-
person.
The same
Yeah,
boring story, but yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
who had to say that Tony in West Side Story was this tall, lanky kid that he's always portrayed as?
Mhm.
He could be, this little fat kid who is idyllic and wants a better world, and you know what? He's going to go for it. And how much more inspiring is that than just another version of the thin New York kid that we've seen 50 times over?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's wrong casting to, have that type of person play the role again, but why fight getting through so many casting choices and having to go out and search for so many people for roles when, hell, you've got 10 other people right here that you just excluded because of how they look.
Yeah.
And also to help people who are watching this to understand what Vivian said at the beginning is that fat is not a moral descriptor. And so the reason why we need to see fat actors in these roles is because Tony, a fat Tony, is still a person. He's still worthy of love and goodness, and his body has nothing to do with his morality, and that's the reason.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, if we all ate the exact same diet and had the exact same exercise regimen, we would all have wildly different bodies. It has very little to do with our lifestyle choices. It's a lot about 100 other reasons, but none of that should matter because it does completely. Sorry, Vivian, yeah.
No, sorry. I was just, none of that affects how you portray a story.
Yeah.
No,
None of that makes you a bad storyteller.
no.
100%.
Sorry, Ash. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, you're good.
I
I'm,
just-
I'm really glad that Dave brought that up because that's something that I really wanted to talk about as well. I think that some positive things, I'm going to shout out myself for making some positive change in a couple of the shows that I costumed and was in. I just, at some point, after hearing so many negative things about these actors' thoughts about their own bodies, I was like, okay, we're shutting it down. You're not allowed to talk about your body anymore. Go home and talk about it. Go eat dinner with your castmates after and talk about it. But in this space, we have to make it a safe space for everyone. And that means checking your body shame at the door. We're here to create theater. We're here to tell stories. We're not here to look like supermodels. We're not here to lose weight for a role. That's not a thing. It doesn't happen. Please don't do that. And yeah, just advocating, I think, as Sierra and Sammy were saying, just like checking your fat bias, like go online, do an implicit bias test. You probably have more of it than you think. We all do. I do. So just like learning more. I think it's really hard for thin people because we are so constantly in the society made to feel afraid of getting fat, as if that's a thing that can happen to anyone at any time for any reason. Especially during the pandemic, we're seeing so many more diet things and exercise ads and things like that, telling people, oh, if your body changes, you're a bad person and it's your fault and no one's gonna love you. And like people are profiting off of this. This isn't happening for no reason. It's not happening because it's true. It's happening because people can make money off of our insecurities. So just being here in our bodies that know what they're doing, that have this metabolism that's keeping them the size that they know that they should be, and just trusting that. And yeah, I think that's about it for mine.
Way to go, Ash. That's a wonderful way to run a space, especially as a costume designer. So that's really great. Really great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can costume me anytime you want.
Deal.
Awesome. Yeah, I will do a little plug. I have felt so good and so powerful in all of the costumes that Ash has put me in. That I just like, I stand on stage and all I have to do is focus on my character, and
Yes.
it's so good. I love it.
That's awesome. When I go to measure people are always like, oh no, you're gonna like judge me for what the number is. I'm like, I don't care, until I like measured and hit Vivian and I was like, damn girl, those hips, like I don't care if you're like a size 8 or 10, like
Oh, that's amazing.
yes.
Awesome. Well, for our wrap up, just some quick things. I would love to see us get rid of the weight question on audition forms.
Oh my God.
It's
please.
not
Yes, please.
necessary.
Yes.
It doesn't tell you any information. I carry 200 pounds different than someone else carries 200 pounds.
100%.
Even if you're using flying rigs, if your flying rigs can't hold that much, they might not be safe for anyone.
Yeah.
So I feel like in general, an inappropriate question on an audition form. Love that we've added pronouns, hate that we've kept weight on there.
I probably have
Also-
lied about that for 10 years, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
100%. Sometimes I like to put like ridiculous numbers down, like way too unreasonably small or way too unreasonably big, and just be like,
What?
did that tell you a lot about me?
Or just put it in kilos or stones or something that they're gonna
Oh
not
my
recognize.
gosh, yes, stones, because that's what the hospital does. I love that.
100%. I would also love to see thinner castmates not speak for me,
Yes.
but you hear stuff, you hear your castmates say, oh, this looks fat, or this looks, all you have to say is, hey, that's not a bad thing. Like, maybe we keep those comments to a minimum, to none at all. Like, advocate for the people around you, just like you would want them to advocate for you, because I guarantee most fat actors would do that for you. They're not gonna let shit slide that's inappropriate, that's abusive. Because a lot of us have had to fight for where we're at and fight to be in the room. And some of us have even gotten to the point where we can say certain things and not have to deal with the repercussions that maybe a younger fat actor has to deal with.
Yeah.
I can say things about a program that I studied in that I know that a freshman couldn't, and that I'm going to be listened to. So I'm going to use that privilege and I'm going to fight for them, just like I wish someone had been fighting for me. So just really encouraging that. Part of the wrap up is, now what? Like, we've discussed this, we know what it is. What can I do actionably now to be better about this? So I have some readings as well as some Instagram accounts that I would encourage following, whether as a fat person or a thin person trying to be better. These are perspectives that you don't have. These are people saying, hey, you're valid. The fact that you're frustrated by these things, that these things hurt you, they shouldn't be going on. First and foremost, I'd like to recommend Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia by Dr. Sabrina Strings. It is a thesis of how fat phobia actually stemmed through white supremacy as well as Puritanism. What wasn't the word? But basically that fat phobia, we've said it before, if we loved ourselves and had no problems with our bodies, that's not what a capitalistic society wants. They benefit from us not liking ourselves, from constantly wanting to be better, constantly being told that we're not good enough. So fat phobia is specifically stemming from racism, capitalism, as well as sexism and misogyny. So she does an incredible job of breaking that down, talking about the origins. It's just an incredible book. I've read it like 3 times because I get more from it every single time I read it. And then the second book I have is The Body Is Not an Apology, The Power of Radical Self-Love. It's by a Black author. Her name is Sonia Renee Taylor. It's a fairly recent published book, and it just examines that you don't need to be sorry for the space that you take up, that you don't need to constantly be apologizing for that, and how to, it's not just kind of this self-helpy, love yourself kind of thing, but really talks about the nitty-gritty, dirty aspects of it, and that it is a journey and that it is hard. And it's okay that it is, all of those things. Another, some Instagram influencers that I would encourage checking out is Fat Angry Black Girl. She's a member of the LGBT community as well as a fat Black activist. Fat Goth, spelled Gawth, Annie Rose on Instagram. She's a fat Gothic film reviewer who discusses body image as well as how it's portrayed in film, especially horror. Your Fat Friend is an author. She writes so many stunning articles that specifically examine how our language around fat phobia and fatness affect those that we love, whether we mean it to or not. Something that she's really focused on has been kind of with the politics of the left's fat phobia is still heard by the people that the left loves, and that it is also internalized. So the fat people that you love still read your hate comments towards the fat people you don't like. So that's not a valid critique of someone. Find something new. And just an incredible queer person on Instagram. And then Fatties and Feelings is an artist. They go by they, them. They are an artist cultivating vulnerability. They do mixed media arts, as well as a lot of information and activism through their art. So those are just some Instagrams that I would encourage anyone, whether you're looking for validation and support from a community that looks like you, or if you're someone who is trying to diversify their following, you've got to change up what you're looking at every day. And one of the number one ways to do that is through your social media. Is if you're not following a diverse feed, stop eating my plant. You're not going to be able to do that in real life because you're not seeing real people. You're not seeing those stories. You're just creating something in your head because you're not hearing firsthand accounts.
Yeah.
So those are my recommendations.
I love that. I'm gonna have to follow some of those.
That's mostly what my Instagram feed is, and let me tell you, it's made the brain goggling during quarantine much better.
The beginning of pandemic, I just started following just beautiful, big, fat Black women, and I was like, why didn't I do this beforehand? This is a great feed. I just like scroll and I'm like, thank goodness. Okay, we're good today.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, thank you, Vivian, for being our lovely host today and having us be on here.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for doing this. Thank you for participating. And thank you another for creating a space for us to do this in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely awesome.
Is that everybody?
Cheese.
Does anybody else want to say anything? Okay, I'll stop.